The chair recognizes the honourable member for Golden Gates.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise as a member for Golden Gates and as chairman of the House Select Committee on Natural Resources in order to give an interim report pursuant to the rules of procedure of the House of Assembly of the Bahamas as amended on 2005 under the rubric Rules Governing Select Committees, page 17 of the said rules. And pursuant to Rule 22.9 thereunder, it states inter alia that, I quote, the chairman of the committee may at any time report progress and ask for leave to sit again, including for an extended time. Also, page 19 of the said rules, and pursuant to Rule 22.21, thereunder it states that a committee, and I quote, a committee may report its proceedings from time to time with or without the evidence and may make a special report on any matter within the scope of the reference to it. Also, pursuant to the same rules under the rubric Order of Business, Rule 39.1L states, quote, presentation of reports to committees. Under the historical matrix, Mr. Speaker, this House of Assembly, pursuant to Rule page 35 of the said rules, 39U, unanimously appointed the Select Committee on Natural Resources on the 8th of July 2020 to the period being the 1st of October 2020. The Honorable Member for Centerville, an independent member, was the mover of the said committee and at all times actively supported by the Honorable Member for Golden Isles, then an independent member, but now a Progressive Liberal Party member of this chamber. The Honorable Members for Centerville and Golden Isles, sir, are applauded and commended for their efforts, and we can applaud them. The government agreed that we ought to have a select committee on natural resources and fully and unanimously supported the mover, resulting in the said appointment by this Honorable House. The Honorable Speaker, in July 2020, appointed the following Honorable members to the said committee: Centerville, Golden Isles, South and Central Andros and Mangrove Key, Marathon, Foulkes Hill, St. Barnabas, and Golden Gates. Due to our COVID-19 experience since the appointment in July, the committee had not progressed as it envisioned at the first meeting, and we were fast approaching the expiry of its life on the 1st of October 2020. Therefore, on Wednesday, the 23rd of September 2020, just about a week before the expiry of its life, of the committee, pursuant to the Select Committee's unanimous decision to seek to extend the life of the committee to at least two, including the 1st of April 2021. The chairman sought leave by the House under the said rules, the rubric Rules Governing Select Committee, page 17, pursuant to Rule 22.9, and thereon it states, as you said earlier, that the chairman of the committee may at any time report progress and ask for leave to sit again, including for an extended time. On that occasion, the sought leave was unanimously granted by this honorable chamber, extending the life of the committee to the 1st of April 2021. The terms of reference of the committee. Mr. Speaker, I've just put on the easel the terms. The Honorable Speaker, also on the 8th of July 2020, the appointment date, read the terms of reference for the Select Committee as proposed by the mover. As proposed by the mover, the Honorable Member for Centerville, which was seconded by the Honorable Member for Golden Isles and unanimously agreed by this House, without amendment, without any deletion or any change, which is as follows, as you will see here: to investigate all matters relative to the natural resources of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, above, on, or below the terrain and or sea, to identify the sources of the natural resources that contribute to the sovereign wealth fund, as well as entities, historical and current, engage in extractions, identify areas of disbursements, recommend to Parliament mechanisms to enhance accountability and transparency in awarding contracts for exploration and extraction and receipt of disbursements, and to consider and suggest the best ways to ensure that the birthright of every Bahamian is legally protected, with powers to send for persons and papers, with leave to sit from place to place, and with leave to sit during the recess. Mr. Speaker, the above committee had held its first meeting on Wednesday, the 22nd of July, 2020. Mr. Speaker, we have a wonderful photo of that first meeting. We have a wonderful photo of that first meeting. These are the members of the committee at the first meeting of the committee in the majority room downstairs. And you will notice there's honorable member for Centerville, Golden Gate, St. Barnabas. There's Foulkes Hill. There's South Andrews and Central Andrews and Mangrove Key. There's an honorable member for Marathon. And the member for Bowling Isles had given his apologies, so he wasn't at this meeting. And so we want to be clear, he did give his apologies. He didn't make this meeting, but he's been a very active member of the committee. The above committee held its first meeting on the Wednesday, the 22nd of July, 2020. At that meeting, pursuant to the Rule 2022-1 of the Rules of Procedure, as amended 2005, providing for an election of a chairman from among its members, and pursuant to that rule, the honorable member for Golden Gates was elected chairman. The work of the committee, sir. We spoke to the issue of identified natural resources, which was the first item listed in the terms of reference. At that next meeting, the committee immediately moved to do the first thing indicated in the terms of reference. That is, to identify the sources of the natural resources. The committee developed an extensive list of at least 25 natural resources so far, with the understanding that the said list might not be exhaustive, and is prepared to amend the list as is necessary in the future. Following that exercise, the committee went through the identified natural resources, asking each member to volunteer to develop preliminary research on at least one of them. Each and every member did so. It should be noted here that each and every member took the lead on at least one natural resource in terms of the initial preliminary research, and others volunteered to assist the lead member under identified relevant legislation. The committee also identified approximately 15 pieces of legislation so far that it was aware of that related in some way or another to our natural resources. Again, the committee accepted that the said list might not have been exhaustive and is prepared to amend the list as necessary in the future. Of particular concern to the committee at the outset was the Sovereign Wealth Fund Act, for many reasons. After all, at the end of the day, it was anticipated that whatever funds were derived from the sale of our natural resources, wherever they might be, and when whoever was extracting or harvesting them, the amounts paid or realized was to be deposited to such an account. The committee determined almost immediately that if this act was to achieve what was intended as best we could determine, then amendments needed to be made. It is noted that just last week in this honorable chamber, the honorable member for Kalani, the most honorable Prime Minister, noted that the Economic Recovery Committee, the ERC, made the very same observation and conclusion that amendments to the Sovereign Wealth Fund Act are needed. Mr. Speaker, since then the committee has been actively moving on several fronts, all at the same time, to do its best to advance its work on behalf of the Bahamian people, to get the facts as to all of our natural resources. Each and every member of the committee is committed to determining all the information about our natural resources because they are our patrimony. They are our inheritance, and they belong to each of us. We all agree, and so does this government, as it is stated by the terms of reference of this honorable chamber and fashioned by the honorable member for Centerville. Mr. Speaker, make absolutely no mistake about it. The natural resources of this country is the birthright of every Bahamian. And this committee is fully determined to get to the bottom of it all the facts, sir. We will operate on a twin track, sir. Everything natural resources on one hand, and simultaneously on that twin track, the Sovereign Wealth Fund Act. We will review that. Mr. Speaker, we realized that we needed to move in a twin track, one having everything to do with identifying the natural resources, where they are, where they might be, what amounts exist, the sustainability of them, were they being extracted or harvested now or planned to be? If so, by whom, in what quantities, what financial benefit was being realized by those who are extracting or harvesting, and ultimately, Mr. Speaker, what financial benefit was derived by and for the Bahamian people? Mr. Speaker, the second track involved having identified the expected benefit to the Bahamian people. Where were the funds going? Were they going to the Sovereign Wealth Fund? Was an account ever set up to achieve the said funds? To receive, the said funds? How and who operates such an account, if it exists? And is there a reporting requirement to the Bahamian people through the House of Assembly or otherwise as to the sources and uses of all the funds so deposited, if any? This committee, sir, intends to have all questions relevant to the Sovereign Wealth Fund answered. All. We all want to know and deserve to know, because it is our patrimony, it is our inheritance, and it is our birthright. Subcommittee, sir. Within the twin tracks, sir, we are doing a number of things. As to the Sovereign Wealth Fund Act, we have appointed a subcommittee to review it in its entirety and report to the full committee. The subcommittee has made progress already, benchmarking our legislation to others around the world. The intent is that the full committee will agree recommendations to the government in regard to the facts and our review of them to ensure that all Bahamians get the benefit of the funds derived from all of our natural resources as regards the Sovereign Wealth Fund. The Sovereign Wealth Fund Act subcommittee members are as follows: the Honorable Member for Foulkes, Chairman; the Honorable Member for Golden Isles; the Honorable Member for Centerville; the Honorable Member for St. Barnabas. As to the natural resources broadly and the mechanics and structure of the committee's work, we have established another subcommittee, Mr. Speaker. That is the Witness Subcommittee. The members of that committee are as follows: St. Barnabas Chairman, Golden Isles, Centerville, and Fox Hill. Mr. Speaker, this committee is critical, absolutely critical in terms of the process as it relates to witnesses appearing before the committee when we get to that point. This committee has done some research already on select committees in the United Kingdom, the House of Commons, and I can tell you thus far, it has proven very instructive, informative, and enlightening. Mr. Speaker, we have also established what we have called an Ocean Industries, Aragonite Mining Encouragement Act subcommittee, designed specifically to address all matters relevant to that act, having regard to our terms of reference and our determination and commitment to get all of the facts about our natural resources, so as to report same to this chamber and to the Bahamian people, and especially so having regard to the recent developments at our last meeting. The subcommittee is co-chaired by Honorable Member for Fox Hill and St. Barnabas. They are co-chairing, and other members include Golden Isles and Centerville. Mr. Speaker, let me say here, so that this committee is very serious and very determined as to every natural resource of our country and every aspect of them, with the strong intent to get all the facts, report them to this Parliament, and most importantly, report them to the Bahamian people. We all ought to know the complete status as to all of our natural resources. As we have said, again, they are our patrimony, our inheritance, and our birthright. We invite information, Mr. Speaker, and this is very important. We want the Bahamian people to know this. We invite information this committee is serious about inviting information. Mr. Speaker, the committee therefore invites persons, organizations, or entities who has any information to share with the committee that they feel we ought to be aware of, so as to investigate it and determine the facts about the matter. I'm going to repeat that, Mr. Speaker. This committee therefore invites persons, organizations, or entities who has any information, to share with the committee that they feel we ought to be aware of, so as to investigate it and determine the facts about the matter. Please send information that you desire the committee to review, which will be treated in strict confidence, to the committee via the clerk of the House. Receipt of the said letter and or documents will be registered as part of the official committee file, and you will receive an acknowledgement of receipt by the clerk. It is our full intention to investigate all matters regarding our natural resources, whether we discover them through our direct efforts or whether they have been brought to our attention, as just mentioned a moment ago. We should point out here, most importantly, that both, whether we discover them or they come to our attention, both will be treated with the same degree of seriousness, consideration, and review. We intend to leave no stone unturned on your behalf and to your benefit, the Bahamian people. Let me also say, Mr. Speaker, if a person has a considered view about existing legislation or legislation one might propose for the committee's consideration and possible recommendation that relates to any of our natural resources, as I mentioned earlier, we have identified 15, but there may be more. Please, we invite you to write to the committee, as stated earlier, through the clerk of the House of Assembly. Mr. Speaker, I now move to site visits. Mr. Speaker, the committee, at its very first meeting, determined to make site visits to the relevant locations in our country where we have reason to believe that our natural resources are being extracted or harvested. At the very first meeting, we determined to make those site visits to wherever we have reason to believe that our natural resources are being extracted or harvested. We intend to see for ourselves and ultimately to see for you, the Bahamian people, so that when we report the facts to this Parliament and to you, the Bahamian people, the report will not just be based on some document. It will be based on what we have seen for ourselves and for you, and observed with our own eyes for you, the Bahamian people. The facts on the ground matter, and we are serious and determined as a committee. Mr. Speaker, in fact, the committee determined islands to visit, islands and keys to visit already. It's already been determined by the committee. And, Mr. Speaker, we have set a preliminary schedule for those visits. It is our intention, following the holidays, by the grace of God, Mr. Speaker, to commence our first trip, the full committee, not a subgroup, the entire committee, as with every planned trip. The first trip being Thursday, planned for Thursday the 14th of January 2021, then the following week, the 21st of January, then the following week, the 28th of January, or as close to that schedule as possible. The above is a preliminary schedule and is by no means exhaustive. We have considered and determined which islands or keys we intend to visit in the first set of site visits, having regard to the information we have received and gleaned thus far. Documents, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as to documents, you will recall earlier it was mentioned that every member voluntarily took the lead on one or more natural resources, every member. Each member will indicate whether governmental documents they determine would be helpful and they would have credible reason to believe or suspect exists, which pertains to the research they are leading on. In that case, the committee will make every effort to obtain such document. That's very important. In that case, the committee will make every effort to obtain such document, whether from a ministry, a department, an agency, office of the government, or corporation. The committee wants to make clear that it expects the government's assistance. As to this, government is fully committed to the terms of reference approved and agreed unanimously by this House, and indeed the wonderful work by this committee today. In fact, the chairman, on behalf of the committee, has already made an official request for information from a government corporation, which request has been acknowledged and assurances given that that request is being acted on. We will get the facts. We are serious, we are determined. Public hearings. Mr. Speaker, the said rules under 2217 provides for public hearings stating as follows, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, quote, a committee may sit in public if the House gives that authority to the committee. That's Rule 2217, close quote. The committee, no question about it, Mr. Speaker, intends to have public hearings as and when it deems appropriate. Therefore, pursuant to the said rule, the committee intends to seek the authority of the House to have some of its hearings in public, sir, for the media and general public, while others will be held in camera. The committee begs and anticipates that the House will grant the said authority for public hearings, public meetings. Conclusion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamian people can rest assured that this committee is working on their behalf and their behalf only, and in their best interest, as each of us treat our work on the committee as a solemn duty to them and to our country, as a solemn duty to them, the Bahamian people, and our country. We, the committee, are determined to get the facts, all of them. We intend to honestly and thoroughly consider them and review them, assess them, and report them to this Parliament and indeed to you, the Bahamian people, in support of the recommendations this committee intends to make to the government regarding every aspect of our natural resources. Finally, sir, I want to say that every member of this committee takes their appointment to this select committee as a solemn duty to act at all times in the best interest of the Bahamian people. We intend to let the investigation, the facts discovered and determined to guide us and our direction solely for the benefit of the Bahamian people by the grace of God. So on behalf of the committee, I thank you for the opportunity to present this interim report and the first interim report of the House Select Committee on Natural Resources and the Sovereign Wealth Fund Act. May God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, I now just want to go to the signature page, sir, if I might. The honorable members of the House Select Committee on Natural Resources and Sovereign Wealth Fund hereby duly sign this interim report on the said committee on this, the 14th day of December 2020, and is signed by the chairman, the member for Golden Gates, Michael Foulkes, the honorable member for Fox Hill, Chanel Ferguson, the honorable member for Central Andrews and Mangrove Key, Pricefield Forbes, honorable member for Golden Isles, Vaughn Miller, the honorable member for Golden Isles, Reese Chipman, the honorable member for Centerville, the honorable member for St. Barnabas, Mr. Shannon Cartwright, and there's one member's name is not signed, is our dear friend, as we all know, had a personal and family tragedy, and so it is not signed by him, but we understand that's the honorable member for Marathon. I think we all understand and appreciate the personal and family tragedy he's facing, and that's the only reason we do not have a signature for him. But we have, otherwise, we have all the members have signed, and this is a report that's agreed by all members of the committee. With that, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the report be brought up. Order that the report do lie on the table.